Ready to go.
Hello, Forge Men's audience. Please hit that like or subscribe button. This week's episode is about leadership at home. This week, joined by my guests, Mark Phillips and Jason Riley, and I'll turn it over to Jason.
Thank you for the kickoff, Nick. So again, welcome Forged Men, episode 7, Leadership at Home. And I will echo Nick's sentiment. Like, subscribe. We're getting subscribers up. We are, well, I guess we're 7 weeks into this, so not quite 2 months. We're at what, 16 subscribers, Mark?
On YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. So be sure and like and subscribe. So please do. So the theme of the episode: a man's greatest leadership assignment is not at work, in business, or in the community. It's at home. Leadership at home is built through presence, consistency, communication, service, and example. This episode challenges men to evaluate how they are showing up for the people who know them best. So, leadership at home. Mark, you're always robust with thoughts. Care to kick us off?
Well, I don't know if I can go that far. I'm not that deep a thinker, but I can tell you that every relationship we have in life, whether it be with a significant other, a spouse, someone at work, is all about us having a role, understanding that role, and being happy with that role and willing to play that role, right? So you have to have the role of leadership in your household. If it's you and your dog, you have to be in control, right? And everybody has to know that. If you have a partner in life, I've been married for 39 years. My wife, it means everything to me. Uh, I lead the household. She understands that I have the best interest for the house and everything we do. Uh, she is okay with that. She's okay with it, me in that role and her in her role. Doesn't mean she doesn't advise me in a lot of things. It doesn't mean I don't go to her and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Um, but at the end of the day, I have to make that call because it's my role to play. It's my job in life. As men, we have many jobs. Sometimes it's punching a time clock somewhere, and sometimes it's digging a ditch or whatever it is. But at home, it's a job as well. I mean, it's a job to stay married to the same woman for almost 40 years. It's a job for her to put up with me for 40 years. I don't always get it right. I get it wrong a lot. Um, I don't admit those very often. I like to say if I tell you it's raining, get your umbrella because you're about to get wet. Um, but yeah, I think it's about roles and everybody understanding and being okay with that role. And if you have, whether it's at work or at home, and you have somebody that isn't okay with you playing that role, guess what? You're not a match. You're not going to make it.
Coach has to choose his players, and sometimes it's a tough decision to get rid of that key player that just doesn't fit.
Amen.
That's very important. So, I mean, from a work standpoint, Mark, I know you and I have the situations. Nick, I don't know if you've experienced it with your car business experience, but I mean, I've seen several times where that top performer is just cancerous to the system, and you have to extract it. Even though the top performer, generally your performance will suffer for a month or two, but then rebound and actually go above because that cancer is eliminated. So, yeah, very, very key point. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Well, number one is I'm learning more and more as my positions in life evolve that a lot like the Chicago White Sox right now, I'm unique in that some of the time I need an opener for my starting pitcher, meaning you take your best relief pitcher and actually let him open the game against the other opposing team's top hitters. So now your top hitters aren't seeing your starting pitcher 3 or 4 times, they're seeing him 2 or 3 times, and it's later in the game. So I have been getting this opportunity. Thank you again today, be an opener. And I would like to take the opportunity to be an opener on every single occasion until I'm the greatest opener on the face of the planet Earth. So I'm going to keep working on that and get better at it because I think it rolls right into leadership at home. And, number one is I think that if anybody doesn't want to explain their position on their personal beliefs or beliefs in religion or maybe my beliefs with Jesus Christ, I can let my actions do that for me. And that's something that I always need to reflect back on is that, no matter what, think about my actions because I remember Charles Barkley one time said, I'm not a role model to kids, but yeah, you are. And even if you're a neighbor, yeah, you are. And if you're a Christian man, you've asked for that responsibility. So you got to think about that at all times because you're a representative of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is guiding you. He is your friend, and you are hurting your friend when you make him look like an idiot. So, what you and Mark really made me think of was I went totally New England Patriots on this, but I think that leadership um, is knowing your job and knowing your role and doing your role. And my role at home lately has been expanding, so I have to learn how to appreciate women in my role, and that's a part of leadership as well, is the way that you treat your fiance, wife, girlfriend. And allowing your humility to go, okay, I know how to do this particular thing better than you, but she could have been an immigrant that came from somewhere else and knows how to do everything that's minuscule better than you could ever imagine. So just sit back and learn and allow yourself to do that. So a lot like Bill Belichick says is I'm not looking for the best player as it relates to the draft. So this is Bill Belichick as it relates to drafting players in the NFL draft. A great trainer of mine named Pete Valu, who's still teaching automotive finance at Southwest Dealer Services. He's doing a great job. He taught me that, you know, I in the Belichickian way, when I look to draft a player, I want somebody who's a right guard. If your job is to go two steps up and then to the right and block this person, I want to know that you're able to do that. So when I sit down and I interview somebody, I ask them, are you capable of moving 2 yards up and to the right? And I sit back and wait for their response. And if it's an overly loquacious response like mine, I probably don't fit into the Bill Belichick system. I'm a little bit too much of a free thinker.
Uh,
But, somebody who gave a shorter explanation might be right for that. So, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and dude, here's the thing that you learn in a lot of therapy. Everybody knows your strengths and weaknesses anyway. So it's all right to admit to them. It's okay to tell your clients that you have people that you hire that are better at all of these things because they'll know your weaknesses too. And that's really what I try to surround myself with. Yesterday was the NBA draft, and anytime there is a draft, I get really excited because young men get an opportunity to be millionaires, and that's really cool that we live in America and that can happen. And but on top of that, it always reminds me of Tom Brady's story when he was the fifth string quarterback at Michigan. And he went to his coach and said, what do I got to do to get on the field? And his coach said, you don't act like a number one quarterback. You act like you're at the beach all the time, dude. Like, you got to take this stuff seriously. And Tom Brady said, I got 2 reps out of 200 every single day. I got the last 2 reps. And you would have thought, as me as the fifth string quarterback, when I went out there, that we were getting ready for the Super Bowl. He goes, so that's just the attitude that I carried for the rest of my time. And that's how you become a number one draft pick, man. And even if you get picked in the fifth round. So, you got to start with that mentality, but also a learning mentality, a humbling mentality. And always remember that you're being watched.
Yes, you are. And you brought up a lot of really, I mean, you brought up a lot of nuggets. I started to take notes, then I realized you were going to mention way too many for me to carry on. So you mentioned the role as an opener. So you're accepting your role, and it's nice to be an opener because you can say a few words, and when you lose your grasp, you can tee it up. I remember
Yeah.
when Mark and I started the AI thing, it was the first group interview call we led, Mark led, and I was taking notes, whatever. And again, I hadn't worked and or been in the public eye really for a year and a half. So I'm like, let me lead the second call. I got to do this, right? I was 32 seconds into it, couldn't breathe, didn't see anything but stars and spots and darkness. It was just nothing. I was, Mark. So the opener is good because you run that first leg in the relay, you hand the baton off, and you're good to go. Yeah, Brady is an interesting case study, and whether you're a fan of Brady or not, I mean, to come in the draft, what, fourth round?
Pick number 199, I
Yeah,
believe he was in the fifth.
yeah, it's fourth or fifth, yeah, and then to go to I'm drawn to Kraft in the hallways and say you made the best, or in his office something.
Yeah.
And then the dedication and the practice. And that's where, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan are case studies, and all this kind of stuff. We don't talk about the 10,000 shots Jordan missed, those few he hit in the finals, but it's knowing your role, accepting that role, and being the best doggone person you can be at that role. And what I like about these is everything just circles back around. There's no intention to relate it back to each other. It is developed, as a coursework framework development, but everything just ties back together. So you have to know your role, and you have to know when you're ready to push that role. So when Brady goes to his coach as fifth string quarterback and says, "What have to do?" and he played those two snaps the best way possible. So it's knowing when to. We're talking about, comfort kills more dreams than anything else. So it's knowing when to push that comfort zone when you're ready. And one thing my dad always taught me: dress for your next role. Don't dress for your current role. So he did a communications course in the Air Force, and he was out at communications towers, and he dressed in a suit and tie. So when we went out, they're like, "Where's your technician?" He's like, "I am the technician." But he always dressed, literally dressed for that next role. So when I came up in banking, it was knowing when to push that. So I learned my teller role, then went to the personal banker platform. I was opening accounts, not getting paid for it, not getting commission, doing all of it to learn the system to help my teammates to get an advantage for me later. So it's always dressing for that and pushing that. So I just like the relation of everything tying back together. Again, a lot of nuggets. Mark, any other takeaways from what Nick said or anything else?
No, I love the way Nick can find a sports analogy for just about anything, and it's relatable. I mean, I'm not a Tom Brady fan.
Yeah,
I hated the Patriots. My oldest son Ben loved them. He's got Gronk's jersey on his bedroom wall and stuff. So, but there is absolutely zero doubt that Tom Brady's the GOAT, right? I when I liked Michael Jordan when he played at North Carolina. The rest of his career, I didn't want to see his tongue sticking out. I didn't want to see any of that. But at the end of the day, I have to admit there is no doubt about it. He's the GOAT, right? So I love those stories. I mean, Michael Jordan cut by his high school coach, and the drive they had to do that, and they picked their role. They picked where they wanted to be, and that's all they thought about. I've got a couple of books from Tim Grover, who was one of Michael Jordan's trainers. Phenomenal books, and the dedication and the tenacity, and even the stuff with Tom Brady, the commitment to the diet, and because not the most physically gifted athlete, very gifted, but not the most physically gifted. There was guys out there that could throw the ball further and harder than he. I mean, Aaron Rodgers could knock a plane out of the air, I think, if he got it close enough to it. Um, but those, I love the analogies, and the ones you chose are, the best ones to go after.
very cool. Yeah, the analogies. Charles Barkley, that guy. Anyway, I'm getting personal with my feelings. So I was a Bulls guy through and through. My second cousin actually played for the Bulls during their success, so I wasn't just a bandwagon guy. So
Sweet.
um, so your home is your first leadership assignment. So men tend to focus priorities elsewhere. So again, when we meet somebody, it's what do you do for a living is usually the first question. So we identify with that role, which again, it's all relating back to each other to each lesson a week. But leadership starts with responsibility. So why would we look outward? So we talk about you have to be the best for yourself. You use the analogy of the oxygen masks coming down in the airplane. Cover your face first, because you can't, if you're taking care of somebody else and you die, pass out, you're no good. So you have to be the best you that you can be. So why don't we look inwardly? Why don't we look at our home as far as that first leadership point? Why do we look elsewhere?
I think number one, it's painful, especially if we're not fulfilling that role. Uh, it's not as gratifying as getting promoted at work. And we're, instant gratification beings. We want it now. The social media, the likes, the this, the that. And I think it's because it's personally painful and probably more difficult to do that role at home than it is on the job, because your title says this is what you're supposed to be doing at work, right? Um, so we follow that role, and if we're successful, we can especially as men, we're bad to wrap ourselves in our career as who we are versus really who we are, right? I don't care what business you're in, I don't care how good you are, unless you're Tom Brady or Michael Jordan, your legacy is not going to be what you did at work. Your legacy, if you're mentioned 100 years after your death, if it will be because of what you did at home.
Yeah, and all too often we see those examples of that person having a heart attack at work or whatever the case is, and the wreck is posted the next day.
Yeah.
It's a machine. It has to continue on, whether you're there or not. And as much as this is something Mark and I have talked about, as much as you can think people at work love and care about you, and you will develop friends or friendly relationships, but you're a cog in the wheel. Um, at home, it's different. And you're right. We have quarterly performance assessments or monthly performance assessments or some kind of check at work. Where's the check-in at home? When do you sit down with your spouse, child, dog, whatever the case may be, and get that, 5 or 10? Where do you get that performance review? Whereas you have those performance reviews at work. So there's not really a check-in. But again, if you're better prepared at home, if that's your peace, your tranquility, if you can come home to that, whatever the workday has, and find peace and comfort, they're going to get better rested, recharged, or energized, recuperated for that next day at work. All good points. Nick, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I I think that when you want to become a leader or you want to be anything at home, it starts with yourself first. And there were a lot of times in life, especially in my life, that I I take a look back and at the most screwed up mental state, and I wouldn't want to be me. I was out there wanting to fix other people's problems. So for other people who have people in your life that want to fix your problems, be on high alert. You know, that's why I started paying people who had taken a lot of time in their life to give their opinion to me on how to fix mine. And I stopped judging, as much as I love Christian community and everything. I see it like a lot of women and men's standards in dating. If the person's not 6'2" and so many pounds and blonde hair and blue eyes, I'm not interested. But I that's not really the way that it works when it comes to getting help, at least that I received. Because when I hit 2017, I realized that I was a colossal failure at taking care of myself, and even the people that I was trying to take care of were failing too. And it was like it wasn't like anything. It was an exercise in inconsistency and idiocracy that I had never imagined my life being. So what I needed to do was make some changes and especially take some lessons that I had taken when I was 19 years old. Now I'm 19 and a half. But I'm 41 now. But when I was 19 years old, I had a boss who really loved me at that time. And he said, Nick, I need you to think before you speak. And before you speak for the next 2 years, I want you to just literally, when people are in the room with you, I want them to think that you're either slow or thinking, like taking a long time to think before you answer. And what I couldn't believe is I'm 21 years old and I'm hanging out with all these automotive executives all the time, very blessed in that capacity. And they start looking at me 2 years later and they're like, I want your opinion. The quiet guy, the guy who thinks before he talks. And it was just like my boss had told me. Somewhere he is celebrating right now, I'm sure. And I I I learned a lot from that experience, but when I started fixing my own life, it was time to shut up and listen and to just take the advice of those around me, like my bosses that God put me in front of and people that I should be learning from. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to learn from every habit and make them into an idol that they and just copycat them. But take the good and bad from everybody and learn like you are somebody's little brother and just doesn't want to make the mistakes. So, and then also there's a lot of faking it until you make it. And I always dreamed of having a girlfriend or wife that called me and said, "Hey, sweetheart, tonight is Bible study." And when you know it, for 32 years of my life, I got girls that didn't do that. No offense to them, but whatever. And now, Now I do, and there's a different standard that comes to that. I remember the first time I was caught lying by Christina. She said, "You're a liar. That's not cool." And it just hit me differently that day. And that's something that you got to just constantly work on with somebody that's going to hold you accountable. And I have men's groups that hold me accountable. And when you're held accountable, it makes for a better man. So that's how I would ultimately answer that question.
Again, a ton of nuggets. I had a few things that I was going to add, and it just continued on. And again, it's all great stuff. Um,
I think you got to run with "Shut Up and Listen."
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be the title. Somebody needs to write that book, "Shut Up and Listen."
well, it's a business principle. I forgot where I heard it. It might have been in one of the YouTube clips that you sent me, Mark, or a book or something. But all too often the other girls that didn't say let's go to Bible study or others want to get their voice heard in a meeting. They want to chime up. They have an opinion. They want to say something, whether it's relevant or not. And a lot of times they're not. They just want to get their voice heard. But the wise man sits behind and waits for everybody else because you can take the good from those ideas. Maybe somebody thought about a perspective that you hadn't, and that can change your perspective to more of an enlightening thought. But be the last person to speak. I also it said when you're in an interview or in a position where you're making a decision, never nod to agree. There's a lot of things, but yeah, always let others speak to take the good away from that. Again, all great stuff. Presence versus provision. Many men have been taught that providing financially is enough, and we know that that is not biblically the leader of the home. But that's not a way to have a solid relationship. So while provision matters, presence matters too. And again, Mark, I think it was last week. I gave you kudos. It might have been on the cohort call on Sunday. But again, you have worked a lot in your life, a lot. The day you were married,
Is
you
that
worked half
about
a
my age?
day. What's that?
Is that about my age?
Yeah, no, it was about your capacity, your presence at work. But when you are present at home, so again, provision versus presence, so that allowed you to be in provision home, to have financial comfort. But when you were home, for whatever time that was, your presence is there. You told me stories of when you were in Chicago, you worked about an hour outside of the dealership, and like you wouldn't let Missy drive by herself at night. Your presence with your family, is there. So I don't know if you want to talk to that point or elaborate on that.
Well, I think that's some of the most important time you have. I mean, yes, we have to work. It's our role to provide. We need to do that. That's where we get some of our self-worth from. Uh, but also, I mean, one of the things Jason hits me with all the time is he'll throw a movie line out or something and I'd say I never saw that movie, and he says I can't believe you never saw that movie. Well, for me, anyway, I'm not saying there's anything against movies because there's a lot of them I love. And sometimes there's movies I go to with my daughters, with my sons, things along those lines. But as a general rule, if I'm at home, I don't want to be sitting in front of the TV. I'd rather be sitting talking to my wife, watching the dogs run and play in the backyard, doing something with one of my sons. Occasionally play Halo or something with my sons. That's because that's something we do together that we can relate to. So I think you just have to have as much presence as you can. And if you're doing something with this or whatever, just slow down and say, "What could I be having a conversation with this person? Could I be doing something together?" Productive for my relationship with my life. Again, that's our legacy, man. I mean, that's those are the people who's going to cry at your funeral. Those are the people that are going to tell stories about you after you left.
Yeah, the presence is huge. And the old values. So you mentioned this, the technology drift. I mean, how old were you when you got your first phone? I think you had it from your advertising job, right, Mark?
Yeah. Well, no, when I was in advertising, I had a pager.
Okay. But
I got in the car business in 2003 and I didn't have a cell phone then. When they made me a manager, they gave me one because I said, "Don't call me. I'm not going to have I don't have
amazing.
a phone."
But now they're so common and they do everything. I mean, measure
Yeah.
your heart rate. I mean, it's not a phone anymore, right? So technology drift is huge, and you see it present in generations. So the older generation kind of resistance technology, don't want to use it. I didn't say it,
Yeah.
although I was looking at one square on my screen, a rectangle.
Mhm.
And then the next generation more adept to it, and the next generation would rather do that than go outside and play. I think I referenced it a week or two ago. My stepmother, an LCSW, said the two flashcards that are least recognized are a kite and a wagon. Like a kid doesn't know what a kite is.
Yeah.
That's sad. But you just see the presence there, and they would more rather interact. I mean, it's like I've seen it on sitcoms. It happens. You see one family member on the couch downstairs texting
Hmm.
the other family member that dinner's ready. We don't have genuine conversations anymore. So, like for me, again, I have a 10-year-old daughter who's turned 10, and we don't have a set schedule. We live very, very close, so I get her whenever. It's usually last minute, and it'll be overnight or hanging out or whatever the case is. But she wants to play on her iPad, so just her presence is cool. But I'm like, what can I do? Because she doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to go see a movie, just doesn't want to do anything. I could hostage her, but I'm not going to do that because she's not going to enjoy it, right? I want it to be fun. So I'm like, well, shit. Brought up board games. So every time she comes over now, we play Sorry. Would never thought that a kid 10 years old, this generation, would want to play a board game.
Yeah.
It's like when I say it, she lights up. She's like, I was waiting for you to ask. So it's just that presence, that relatability to being there, not watching a movie necessarily or playing on your phone or anything like that.
Something I'd like to add, especially if you have kids involved, is how you treat them or how their time is with you. You're teaching them how to handle it when they're adults, right? How you handle your parents as they age and stuff. You teach them this is how life is supposed to be done. So we have a huge responsibility to the next three generations.
Yeah.
How we handle things will affect that.
And both you and I posted on Father's Day um, different angles of it, but the same kind of message as far as your role as a father, whether it be to a son or a daughter, is vitally important.
Monsters.
Yeah. Nick, you want to chime in there, buddy?
Yeah, I providing financially is not enough. Uh,
Yep.
I know that from personal experience. I know that from parental experience. Your your presence is required to have meaningful conversations. When you are inebriated and you are having conversations, that's not you, unfortunately.
Yep.
I presence is important, and in providing that to people is ultimately one of my favorite sayings in life is that we were all put here to help each other get through it. And I think part of having a presence is understanding when to take your presence away. A lot of times, if you talk about the drift for me comes from emotional drainage. And at 16 years old, I had the opportunity to not go to jail, but to the bad kid camp in Utah. And there they told me, you got to read this book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And I learned about bank accounts and people and how people can either make deposits with you or withdrawals. And if somebody is doing nothing but taking withdrawals from your energy, it takes away from your presence. And you need to be able to identify that because I'm in the book of Joshua right now, and we serve a God who, unless I'm reading the book of Joshua wrong, he really likes boundaries. And as men, we need to provide that boundary, and our presence needs. Jordan Peterson says that you need to be a monster. Our presence needs to be part monster to just automatically establish a boundary. We love these automotives or business relation or topics that I can relate this all to. It's like a security system on a car. Is that going to deter a professional thief from getting into the car? Probably not. But do you want an alarm going off the entire time that's traceable to law enforcement? Like, if you're trying to do your job, no. So let's make an easy decision here. If you're in a parking lot and your car's there and you're not, thief sees your car, it has an alarm on it, and he goes to the other Honda Civic, then the thing's paid for itself already, in my estimation. So
Yep.
Your presence needs to be first and foremost something that is put together that other people can see, And don't be afraid to be that guy that has their shoulders back, that walks into restaurants when everybody turns around briefly and takes a look at. Because you're doing something right if you're doing that. And it starts with your walk, your posture, and how you treat yourself. Everybody can see a visual representation of how you treat yourself every single day. And then also, don't forget to smile. I don't care. Everywhere you go, people don't want to see a dog on a mission. Like they want to see an approachable person. So smile.
Yep. Speak softly and carry a big stick. It's um, when you have the inner peace, the inner knowledge, inner comfort of who you are, where you are, whether it be emotionally, financially, physically, whatever the case is, when you have that knowledge, and I find it does come with age or wisdom or experience, because age is really nothing but experience. It allows you the time for experience. But when you know who you are and you're comfortable in who you are, you walk differently. You don't have to walk in exerting a presence. The presence just comes from you. Um, so yeah, when you have that confidence, and again, all ties back to being the best you can be for your family, for your job, for whatever, you just walk differently. Has a different air about it. Kind of like I think Mark made the point earlier when I don't know if it was a video I watched earlier, but when you realize that everything that happens in your life is because you did it, whether you get stuck in traffic or whatever. We've talked about it a couple times, but when you realize that everything in your life is controllable and executable by you, by some decision, whether you knew it or not, it's powerful. And again, when I first heard it, it's like you really have to digest it. It took me about a week to chew on it. But when you truly grasp it, and it took longer than a week to really digest it, but when you really understand that, it's powerful. And again, you walk differently. Um, so yeah, um, communication builds trust. Many family conflicts aren't caused by a lack of love, caused by a lack of communication. So again, this all just talks about being present. Um, Money doesn't buy conversation. Money can buy comfort. Money can buy a little bit of time, perhaps. But communication, listening, speaking, two ears, one mouth. Gentlemen,
I think communication is probably the toughest part for men. We're terrible communicators. I mean, we're good at hey, put that over here. Hey, do that. But the everyday life stuff, I I mean, I have to work at it. It's hard for me, even though Missy and I have been together for over 40 years, counting dating time. It's hard for me to tell her something difficult, right? Or something that's not flattering for me or something I do wrong or fail at or I mean that's difficult and you just have to that's part of loving yourself to the point to where it's unconditional just like your dog. That's what I love about dogs. They just I mean you want to know if your wife or your dog loves you more, lock them both in the trunk of the car and see which one's happy to see you when you open it. It's the dog, all right?
we're
And
gonna have to
it's
find a way to edit
unconditional.
that part out.
It's truly unconditional. And you have to get to that with yourself, right? And if you get to that, I think the communication and I think it's a constant struggle. You have to be cognizant of, hey, I should be talking about this.
Cognizant and intentional. So I know my path. My dad would want to when I moved down here. My dad would want to have dinner, so we'd sit at the dining room table at opposite ends, had the gold flatware and a sirloin, not a fillet or a ribeye, but a sirloin. So it wasn't that silver spoon or anything. But we'd have our sirloin. We'd sit at the opposite ends. We'd talk about the week. I wasn't used to talking. I had nothing to talk about. So I learned from that just to be, again, be present, be intentional, have those talking points, and be comfortable talking about things that are uncomfortable. Again, the brotherhood and again, the relatability and tie back of all of it. Again, what you've helped me get through this past year and a half or so, Mark, and our conversations and all that. So, um, Nick, what are your thoughts?
You want to communicate with people, you need to be a person that people want to communicate with. If you're ruminating about the same stories or you are just overwhelmingly annoying, people might not want to communicate with you. And I learned that no more than in 20, I think 12, that would be a good year. And I was Mr. Negative up to the point where everybody said, dude, you are negative. Like, and I looked around and went, well, uh, I lost my division in New Mexico. I lost my mom, and there's not a lot to be happy about right now. And then you got to talk to a person who's not happy. And my goodness, you might find that you have a lot to be happy about, and that people are trying to be you in that circumstance. So, you know, communication takes, you communicating. I can blame the women of my past all I want. That was my decision, and quite frankly, three of them, one who's in New Mexico, the other Laguna Niguel, and the other one in Arrowhead now. Without the presence of those three particular people in my life, I would never have the opportunity to be engaged to the woman that I am now, because I needed to learn some lessons through communication with all of those people to fail in order to get something right down the line. We all question as to what's going on in our trials and tribulations, but if you take the time to reflect and be grateful, you can find that the creator of everything is just trying to help you along your way, and it will lead to things that are mind-blowing to you. So what I really encourage men to do is, it's okay. Yesterday I was at boxing and I had a very productive conversation about alcoholism with a fellow boxer. And these are important conversations that need to be had, because I don't know the next temptation, and they come all the time, that I'm going to want a Macallan 12 on the rocks, because I used to be the guy who taught automotive finance, believe it or not, Mark. And then people would come to me for their advice. Okay, this was long before we had online funding and stuff like that. And I would say, hey, look, and a couple of students of mine on a couple of occasions into their career. If you're not familiar with automotive finance, it's not that I don't love working for Mark Phillips. It's just, it's a draining job at times that takes a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get away from that. You could schedule it for 40 hours a week as much as you want. And God bless you guys at Cerritos that are.
Yeah.
You're still working 50, 60 hours a week. And, that's just the job. But, what I really, really learned is that over time, if you're not communicating with your boss, you're not communicating with those at home, and you're not communicating with your environment, nobody knows what you're going through. And if you can only come up with one thing that you're going through, and share that one thing, a lot of the time that's not being vulnerable enough to get out what it is that you need to as men. And
Sure.
not all the time do we get to do it with our best friend, or with our companion, or with a person that's going to be paid to hold your secret. We need to communicate what we're feeling at all times, and do it in a productive manner, not with a cigarette and a bunch of cuss words and no answer to the question.
Yep.
Sure, we need that reprieve. But we need the friend that goes, okay, dude, I get it, but how are we going to solve this problem? One of the best things that ever happened to a middle black sheep child like me is meeting a Russian fiance, because every problem I have in the Russian community is settled with like 4 words at the most. They just look at you, they're like, your life's great, move forward. It's just, but everything's very simplistic there. And it's a blessing to me. So, one of those things is also really with communication is identifying that cutoff point too. Because as men, we have to have value. And at some point, if our communication is not being received, we need to learn God's guidance and let patience take over, and move our communication efforts to somebody else. So when you are able to do these things, other people notice your presence. And more, like we had a discussion before this with Mark that was very profound, in my opinion. And I think that God is calling us men to communicate more and more and better,
Yep.
because this world's getting out of control. And I think God is sitting back and going, what are my Christian men going to do at this time? Are they going to sit back? And a lot of our complaint that I hear while I'm watching UFC fights and the NBA draft and communicating with powerful men all over is that, oh, I'm not supposed to be the toxic masculine male. And every time that I try to take control, that's what I get accused of. Well, great. God called us to a purpose. Figure out how not to be that. It's not that hard. It's like 20 minutes of your time. Think really, really hard and try another way. Like so do that. And I just encourage people to be uniquely gifted to other people, recognize what you can do to help them and treat everybody like a ADHD kid. Like everybody needs their own time and attention because we do.
We do. And again, a lot of good stuff there. I have so many talking points and they all get blurred together. But no, it is knowing when to make yourself present, knowing when not to. Mark again talked to me multiple times about revenue streams, all that kind of stuff, and was coming to an end of those conversations. And I have somebody in my life who will go unnamed that I've had the almost mirrored relationship with, and it's like it doesn't go, and then you realize that is not your role in that person's life. And I had that conversation with him because again, the truth gets us to the end result quicker. I'd rather just be blatantly honest. I'm not going to intentionally try to offend anybody, but if we're not vibing, I mean, I've ended interviews in the middle of them or at the beginning of them because there's no point in me talking to this person for the next 20 minutes or whatever time frame than them waiting 2 days for a phone call because I know right now it's not going to happen. And it catches people off guard because we aren't honest and truthful and upfront. Coddling gets us nowhere. Coddling gets in the same spot. It's okay. This happened to you. What could be? You can't do any better than this. It's okay. It happened. Now let's pick up. Let's put our panties on and let's go back out and do it right. So it's that it's okay. It's that hug. But now let's go. It's not just stay in that spot forever. Um, so yeah, all good stuff. And that kind of leads us to the next point. Leadership is built through consistency. So I, when I was in the car business, went to the finance office and was offered a desk job, a sales manager job, a few times, and said no because I knew what the salaries were the people I was managing in banking and what those personalities were, and I knew what the salaries were or the income was in the car business and what those personalities were, and I didn't want a part of that. But as I transitioned to the desk, one sales manager in every sales meeting would be, bring me every deal, bring me everything. I don't care how far it is. And then as soon as the sales meeting went over, was done, salesperson X would show up. Hey man, I have to get that shit in here. Like would completely just degrade them. And I was like, you just told him to bring you anything, everything. And now you're trash him. So do you think that salesperson brought a deal the next time he was asked?
No.
So consistency, and if you can, there will be deviations, but consistency is a pattern of the majority of time. So you have to be consistent. Again, at home, at work, with a workout program, anything, consistency. So people should know what version of you is coming home. Are you consistent in your attitude? Can you leave work behind? Um, guys have any thoughts on that?
I think you hit most of them. I think that's huge. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not going to add to that.
it's pretty basic. That's really all the talking points I had. Do you guys have any open forum stuff to
I,
lead
you
or
know,
drop in the
Nick
chat?
Nick mentioned a few minutes ago toxic masculinity,
Mhm.
and I think that's a term that society's thrown out to push men back a little bit out of being real men. You know, toxic masculinity is bullying people. It's a lot of little things, and there is that out there. But just being a man is not toxic. That's what you're supposed to. You're a protector, provider, those things. And as we get better communicating, we become that. So be careful with that phrase and letting somebody push that on you.
Yeah. And those labels will go out so quickly as a defense
Yeah.
mechanism. And I'll throw up because, and for those of you watching, these topics are kind of expanded on in a lot of our individual segments. So, Mark, I think it was your video like 3 days ago. You talked about toxic masculinity, and I thought about mansplaining. So, if I get what
You
mansplaining
don't think
is, but like that's just thrown out. So it's a defense. It's a hold up, whatever. So that label, we'll get there. So, um, cool. Nick, any final thoughts from you, sir?
You know, it's like Mark said, it's okay to be a man, and it's okay to have an opinion, and it's okay to speak up, and it's okay if you see something wrong, it's okay to say something about it, and it's okay to talk to the right people about it. There's too many men, especially here in Chicago. Heavily involved in prison ministry, and there's too many men taking problems into their own hands. It's okay. So use the resources that you have, and consistency. Consistency means doing stuff even when you don't feel like doing it. And the most consistent thing that I hear from my inspirational speeches from Kobe Bryant and Mike Tyson and all of these people who shouldn't be idolized is, they didn't feel like coaching every day. They didn't feel like staying 4 hours after practice when they were 38 years old with a torn Achilles, but they did. And the best coach I've ever had in my life is Coach Miner, my sophomore season of our football. And he told us at the beginning of the season, he said, "Look, I have a wife and kid at home. It's a new kid." He goes, "So I want to be around this kid because he can't even talk back." He was really cool. So I can't directly quote him, but we all looked up to Coach Miner, man. And he talked like that. And he said, "So when we have practice, we're going to shoot for an hour." We went 8-2 in Southern California. That's not a joke, but he said, but if we don't get done what we need to get done during that hour of practice, I will keep you here all night until we get it done. That season, it happened 3 times. I won't forget the nights. And he made sure. And one time we had a day to prepare for it. And so that's the consistency is needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it, but it also doesn't need to be done in overdrive. So listen to yourself, listen to your body, and get out there and get them.
love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mark, good?
I'm good.
Cool. Well, again, to quote the illustrious Nick, like, subscribe, and to Mark, do all the things. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Again, plagiarize and implement. No original thoughts. What these guys said, like, subscribe. Let's blow it up. Again, we'll keep coming to you with new topics. Again, any thoughts, feel free to message us, whether it be private, post in the videos. We'd love to hear from you, interact. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks, Forge Men. Have a great week.
Go Bulls.
And White Sox, apparently.